Hello and welcome to this recorded webinar on managing uncertainty during the COVID-19 pandemic. My name is Gareth Hughes. I'm a clinical advisor to Student Minds, and we're going to spend the next few minutes just talking about the kinds of uncertainty that many students are experiencing during this period in time, and why uncertainty can cause us so much difficulty, why it can trigger stress and anxiety and low mood. And then towards the end of the webinar, we'll be looking at some things that we can maybe start to do to help us manage that uncertainty, reduce the negative impact that it might have on us overall, and help us manage going forward so that hopefully you can have as good an experience of being a student as possible, despite the fact that these are uncertain times. So in the listening exercises that we've been doing and in the research that we've been doing at Student Minds, it's become very clear to us that uncertainty is one of the things that's causing many students a lot of difficulty. Obviously, there is a lot about the academic year coming up in 21-22 that's uncertain, and the truth is that it's likely to remain uncertain for some time. Students have told us that they're concerned about not knowing how they're going to be taught, how much is going to be online, how much of it's going to be in the classroom, concerned about how they're going to make friends or maintain their support networks if they're returning students, how they're going to find money if they're not able to work. So the whole range of things right across the whole scope of student experience impacting on how good people are feeling about the year coming up, how hopeful they are or not. Now, of course, universities are absolutely doing their very best to clarify what they're going to be doing, what they plan to do, how students are going to be taught. But the truth is that a lot of this isn't in universities' control. And they are as victim to the vagaries of what happens with the COVID-19 pandemic and what might happen with future lockdowns as the rest of us. So they're doing their very best to try and give as much clarity and certainty as they can. But the reality is no university in the country can at the moment say this is definitely how the next term will happen, because there is too much uncertainty for them to be able to say that as well. So what that means is we're going to be working with uncertainty for some time. As students, as members of staff, as people involved in the university sector generally, this uncertainty is going to continue. So we need to find ways of working with it, living with it, and managing it so that we can continue to thrive and flourish and still have a good student experience, learn a lot, and make sure that our well-being continues to do as well as it possibly can in these circumstances. Now, the truth about uncertainty is it is something that we find particularly difficult, and there are some interesting studies that show this. So we know, for instance, that we often prefer bad news to uncertainty. That one of the famous studies that tells us about this was a study of people who were suspected as having Huntington's. Now, Huntington's disease is a genetic condition, so it's something that you would inherit. And there were a group of people who had people in their family who had Huntington's disease, and they were administered a genetic test to see if they were likely to develop Huntington's disease in the future. Now, unsurprisingly, those patients who were told they definitely didn't have it, they weren't going to get it, they saw their mental health and well-being increase over the course of the following year. The really interesting thing is the same was also true of those who were told that they did have it. So those patients who were told, yep, it's there, you have it, you will develop it at some point, they saw their mental health and well-being increase. The group who didn't see an improvement in their mental health and well-being were the group who were told, we can't really tell, the test is inconclusive, you might have it, you might not have it, I'm sorry, this doesn't really help to resolve it. So it was the group that was left with uncertainty that continued to experience that impact on their mental health and well-being overall. Now, why might this be? Well, if you think about why we might have developed this response to uncertainty overall, let's imagine way back in time, we're out in the wild somewhere, and up ahead in the bushes, we see something. Now, it might just be the trunk of a tree, or some flowers, or a large bird, but it might also be a lion. Now, in that moment, what happens is your brain moves into what we call the fight, flight, freeze mechanism. So it's speeding up your heart, it's sending blood pumping to your muscles, it's heightening your senses, and it's putting you into a state of what we call hyperarousal. So you're extra alert, you're extra ready to respond if that thing in the bush really is a lion. It will enable you to turn more quickly, run more quickly, and hopefully escape so that you survive. Now, that actually is a really well-developed system, because if you are uncertain if it's a lion or not, it makes perfect sense from an evolutionary point of view for us to stay in the hyper alert state until we know that it is not a lion. Because If we go into the, oh, well, it might be a lion, it might not, well, let's not worry about it too much, then there's a very good chance we're going to be eaten. Whereas if we stay hyper alert until we know either way, then we're likely to be able to escape the thing that's causing us danger. In this case, as we're talking about the lion. So that's a really useful thing if you are in immediate danger. The problem is that hypervigilance isn't really supposed to be something that we stay in for a prolonged period of time. So it's great for keeping us safe in the moment, not particularly great if it keeps going on for a long period of time, because it can then become very tiring. Remember, all that blood pumping around your system, your heart's racing, you're breathing in more, you're also focusing much more, so your thoughts will get drawn far more to that stimulus, to that thing that you're uncertain about while you try to work out what's going on. So your thoughts are drawn to it, it induces anxiety. You can then start to feel like you're just exhausted, your mood can get low. So overall, being in hypervigilance for a long period of time can have negative impacts on our well-being overall. So in managing the uncertainty that we're experiencing at the moment, what that means is if we can't remove the uncertainty, and we've accepted right at the beginning that we can't, we therefore need to work on reducing that hypervigilance, giving ourselves time to rest and recuperate from the impact of the uncertainty initially, and then to try to reframe the situation that we're facing. Because uncertainty can only cause us problems if we perceive risk to us in that uncertainty. So for instance, if I said to you, it's very uncertain at the moment who will win the Eurovision Song Contest next year, the likelihood is you're not likely to feel very anxious about that. It's an uncertainty. You can't resolve it. It doesn't really present any kind of risk to you. So unless you're likely to be one of the contestants next year, it's not likely to set your heart racing particularly. So it's the way that we think about the uncertainty that also has an effect. And in that way, thinking can create our reality. The way that we think about the uncertainty that we're facing can create the impact on our well-being overall. Now, remember, this is not trying to dismiss the uncertainty. It's not trying to dismiss the difficulty of managing it, or to say that all of this is simple. All we need to do is just change our thoughts and therefore it'll all go away. But it is to say that if we can work with our thoughts, we may be able to reduce the impact that uncertainty has on us so that we are able to maintain our well-being better than we otherwise could do. So there's a little model of how we react to uncertainty that's quite a useful one to think about, and I often have it in my head when I'm thinking about things that are uncertain. So the first thing is that uncertainty needs to be attention grabbing. Is it a lion or not? That's a pretty attention grabbing thing. Is it who's going to win Eurovision next year? Not quite so attention grabbing. Then we react. It pulls our focus. We go into that state of hyper alertness. We concentrate on it to try and understand what's going on. What is it good? Is it bad? Is it risk? Is it not? Now, if we can then explain what's happening, if we're able to provide a rational explanation to ourselves of what's going on, to give ourselves a narrative and a story in our head that makes it feel okay and manageable, then we adapt to the uncertainty and we move on. So if, for instance, you have a sudden pain in your leg, but you've done a lot of exercise recently and you felt it tweak when you were doing some work on it in the gym, and you can think, yeah, I've got pain in my leg. I know where that came from. It came from that exercise in the gym earlier. I just need to rest it. Then the uncertainty about what's happened to your leg has been explained. You adapt to it. You don't worry about it. You move on. If the pain comes out of nowhere, then it might be something that draws your attention and makes you a bit more concerned. And it's when we're stuck in the in-between place that we tend to end up in that hyper-aroused state, because if we can't explain it away, if we can't adapt to it because we know and understand what it is, and we can give ourselves a story to explain what's happening, we remain in that state of arousal. Now, if you look at the little picture to the right-hand side here, you'll see it's one of those pictures which can be two things at once. In the white, you'll see a vase or a candlestick, depending on how you view that, or in the black, you'll see two faces looking at each other. And you might find that as you look at it, you fluctuate from one to another. But it's actually very difficult to look at them both at the same time. Our brain wants it to be one thing or another. And very often when I do this with students in classrooms, I get students just saying, please just take it off the screen, because actually I can't cope with looking at something that's two things at once. My brain just doesn't like it, because the uncertainty triggers that in us. So what is it that we need to do to then help manage this uncertainty? How do we need to work with it in order to manage this, manage the impact on our well-being, and ensure we can have as good a time as being a student this year as possible? Well, the different things work for different people, and that's really important to always acknowledge. But I think for many of us, the place to start is with acceptance. There is no point in arguing or fighting with the reality that we find ourselves in at the moment. There's no point in trying to wish away COVID-19, to wish away the uncertainty, to say, I wish I could make it certain. I wish it could just disappear. Why isn't it? What can I do? Can I make it? Because all that happens is you become more and more frustrated. You get yourself wrapped up in arguments with yourself, and you're burning up lots of energy and emotion as you get more and more worked up. So instead, what may be more helpful if you can do this, and it's not necessarily an easy thing to do right away, but it's something you may be able to work towards, is to be able to say to yourself, okay, look, this is an uncertain situation, and it's likely to remain uncertain for a while. But you know what? That's probably okay, because I will manage. Universities know that this is uncertain. My lecturers, my peers, my family, they all know about the uncertainty that's going on. So we're all going to be working together and supporting each other. And whatever happens, we can probably adapt. And the lesson of the last few months is that when we went into lockdown and all of those extreme things that suddenly were happening, in general, we found ways to adapt. It might have been difficult, it might have been emotionally tough at times, but we found ways to make it work. So we will make this work, even if it is uncertain, and we'll be okay. Perhaps with a bit of support, but we'll get there. Part of this is also about accepting the reality of the emotion that uncertainty brings. Now, remember I said to you at the beginning, when you're seeing that thing in the bush that might be a lion or might not, there's an emotional response. That fight, flight, freeze, putting you into that fear response clicks in straight away. There's nothing you can do to stop that. That's a human response. That's how we have evolved to be. That is your biology at work. You cannot stop the initial emotional response. So it's okay. All that emotional response is telling you is you're a human being having a normal response to what are normal circumstances right now. So if the uncertainty of next year makes you feel worried or frustrated or disappointed or sad or angry, that's okay. It's perfectly okay. Negative emotions are not harmful in and of themselves. It is okay that you feel like that. That doesn't mean that you let those emotions control you, but it does mean that you can just say, look, it's all right to feel like that. It's okay. Maybe you can talk to a friend about it or a member of your family or a guardian and just kind of go, yeah, this is how I'm feeling about this right now, because it's a shame the year isn't going to work out the way I wanted it to. It's not necessarily going to be the beginning that I hoped for the academic year. But you know what? We'll work with it. I'll get over this feeling in time, and it will be all right. And when you're able to do that, when you're able to accept reality as it is, you are then able to work with it to make your experience as good as possible. Whereas when you try to fight off reality or ignore it or pretend it can be something else, what happens is you're not really working with the real kind of problems and difficulties that are in front of you. You're also not taking advantage of the opportunities and the good things that are in front of you. And so you miss opportunities to make things as good as they can possibly be. Now, this is acceptance that we're talking about, but what I'm not talking about here is rumination. When I'm saying accepting your emotions, what I don't mean is wallowing around in those emotions. Spending lots and lots of time going, woe is me. Why is it happening to me? Why does this have to happen when I'm at university? Isn't it a dreadful thing? Now, it's natural that we have some of that. It's natural that we experience that. But one of the key things about rumination is that it makes you go round and round and round a thought process without ever really coming to any solutions, without ever really giving you any steps forward. So we need to be careful of that. We need to be careful not to let those negative emotions then dictate our behavior as we go forward. We can accept them as part of reality and then look at, okay, so how do we move forward from this? How do we make the situation as good as it possibly can be? And of course, there will be positive elements in your student experience in the coming year. Because the truth is, student life is always a mix of positive and negative experiences. You will have some learning that excites you, that you find meaningful. You will spend time with friends, whether it's online or on campus, that you will find meaningful. You will feel close to other people. Some of you will find love. These things will still happen, just in a different way. It will be a different journey than you were expecting, but the same things will still be happening, just in a different way. You will have a mix of positive and negative experiences as a student. Now, we can't predict what they're going to be for each one of you individually. But it's always impossible to predict that. Being a student is an uncertain journey right from the beginning. And that's okay. As we say, thousands of students every year go through that uncertainty and emerge on the other side, most of them with good well-being intact, having learned a lot, having been prepared and ready to go out and start their lives. So our focus then needs to become in what are the things we can control? Where can we bring certainty? And generally where we can bring certainty is to our day-to-day. So can we find a healthy balance in our day-to-day activity? And to focus on planning on what you can do now and what you can start to put in place to try and make things more certain and make them less of a threat to you, less of a risk to you overall. So what can we control and what can we make certain? Now, things like maintaining a basic structure to your day are really important. Now, if you're working over the summer, that might help to give you that structure, or if you have children, that might help to give you some structure because children are very good at enforcing structure on us. But if you don't, then maintaining a structure for yourself is a way of maintaining control of what's happening of your day. It'll make you feel more in control and it'll make things feel more certain for you overall. You may want to think about how you stay in regular contact with others, or making sure that you're eating healthily, maintaining good sleep. Maintaining good sleep makes so many things so much easier, including managing uncertainty. Then think about those things that you are most concerned about in terms of the next academic year. And there's a little action planner on the Student Space website that you can use to help you with this if you find it useful. Try to take a structured approach to those things about which you are most concerned next year. So that might be about making friends next year. Stopping to think, okay, how exactly am I going to do that? Where might I meet friends? It might be in class. If I'm moving to student accommodation, I might meet some people there. But are there other student union societies? How are they meeting? Are they meeting online? Are they meeting on campus? Can I use online forums to meet other people in my university before I go? Does my university provide any social space where I can go to meet people on my course or in my halls of residence, or just students who share similar interests with me before I go? So that what you do is, rather than leaving the am I going to make friends and meet people to chance in the vague hope that somehow things work out, you instead have a very structured, solid plan that you can use to help you feel more in control of this and to give you more certainty that yes, you will. If you go through all of this, you will inevitably meet other people. It's also important to try and let go of the perfect idea in our mind of what it was going to be like to be a student this year, whether that's first year, second year, third year, or a fourth year, or whatever. Whatever you had imagined in your head prior to COVID-19 coming along is not now going to happen. And so when you're thinking about how you're going to construct the next year, try to let go of that image. Don't keep thinking about how can I reconstruct it? How can I get as close to that as I possibly can? Because all of that does is it makes you focus on the experience you're not going to have. Try to let go of that and instead think about, okay, this is the circumstance. Remember, this is the reality that I'm in. What are the things I can do? How can I plan to make this as good an experience as possible in this circumstance and in this situation? And we're looking at making your choices good enough. I often see this, in restaurants. If you get a menu that's got loads and loads of mouth-watering things on it, suddenly everyone at the table is incapable of making a choice. Whereas if you have a menu with 4 things on it, sometimes people can just go, yeah, I'm having that. And what's happening there is we're getting so caught up in, oh, but what if that's nicer? Oh, but what if that's nicer? When actually, it doesn't really matter. As long as the meal that we pick, we enjoy, that's really the only thing that matters. So think about that for your year ahead as well. As long as the thing that you pick is enjoyable and meaningful and enables you to engage with other people and meet all of your needs in balance, then it will be a good year. And there's no point in comparing it to some other imagined, idealized year. But what you can help doing is, while you're thinking about that reality, you can start thinking about those possible positive things that might still happen even in this circumstance. Because what that can do is it can dilute down the fears you have and the negative thoughts you have about the next year. And that then starts to give you something to look forward to. And if the uncertainty that you've got is, remember, you've got a story in your head that's a bit more positive, then you're more likely to be able to adapt to the uncertainty and move forward with it as you go. And remember, life is always uncertain, as we've talked about. Student life has always contained ups and downs. The ups and downs this year just happen to be different from the ups and downs that students have always experienced up to now. You will definitely have some positives as well as negatives in your student experience. So be aware of that, be open to them, look out for them, and do what you can to make them actually happen. Try to accept those things that you cannot control and that you cannot make certain, and let go of them wherever you can, or see what you can do to make them certain and plan ahead. And then the really key thing from all of this is once you have your plan in place, start acting on it. But start acting by taking some small steps initially, one or two small, achievable steps. Don't try to do too much at once, because generally when we do that, what happens is we just get a bit overwhelmed by all the things we're trying to do, and then we just want to give up. So it's more productive to start by doing one or two small things and then build from there. Once you've got those things in place, you can then do the next two and the next two. And gradually, you're making a huge progress and movement towards the student year that you want to have, and that is as good as it possibly can be. And remember, amongst all of this, to take time to rest and recuperate. This circumstance, this situation that we find ourselves in, can be tiring in ways that you don't appreciate and don't expect. You may be managing uncertainty even when you're not consciously aware of it. You may be worrying or thinking about things even when you're not aware of it. And it's really important that we are taking time out, that we're getting breaks, particularly that you're paying attention to your sleep and getting as good a sleep as possible, to allow your body and your whole system to rest and recuperate. Because when we're rested, managing uncertainty, managing things that feel outside of our control, feels much more comfortable and much easier. When we're tired and irritable, much harder. So take that time to rest, recuperate, give yourself that space, plan, take small steps. And you know what? You are going to be fine. The next academic year will happen. You will learn things that you didn't know. You will still grow and develop. You will grow and develop in ways that are different to how you would otherwise. You'll find out things about yourself that are better than you expected. You'll still meet other people. You will still make friends. It will just happen in a different way. And you'll have a whole different experience to reflect back on. And, you know, in future years, when you're talking to your children or grandchildren about this and you're telling them all about it and they're not believing you, because that's what happens with children and grandchildren, but you'll be able to reflect on how much you learned and took from this experience and how you managed that uncertainty and got through to the other end. But don't forget to be willing to use the support that's around you. The support that's there in universities is built to help you. And they know what you're going through right now. So don't be afraid to contact the support services at your university and ask for help. And you can find out about those support services on the Student Space site if you search under your support. Student Space itself has got lots of resources on here for you as well. There's lots of different kinds of support. Explore the site, find out what's there. Feel free to use that and to use the links to the other support that's available online to help you as well. And then don't forget your friends, family, guardians, all those other resources that you have, including your own, the strengths and the intelligence and the brilliance that you bring with you to help you get through all of that. And if you use all of that support, it will help you get through the year and have an absolutely fantastic time. This period in our lives will pass. There will come a moment when we move past it, when we have drugs that can treat it or vaccines that can prevent it. We will move past this. And in the meantime, you will learn, you will develop, you will grow, and there will be a good future for you there, out there, where you can go and have a great career and a great life. So focus on now, focus on what you can control, plan, act, take small steps, use the support to help you get there, and have as fantastic a year as you absolutely positively can. Good luck, and remember, there's lots of support around you, and we're all here to help you as much as we possibly can. Thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed this webinar. I hope it's been useful. Please do give us feedback on the Student Space site, and hopefully we'll talk to you all again in the future.